The sun hung heavy over the dusty streets of Deadwood, Dakota territory, the kind of heat that made tempers flare faster than a match to dry tinder. Clara Hayes knew that better than most. The punch came out of nowhere, sending her reeling into the dirt, the coppery taste of blood flooding her mouth. "Should have kept your opinions to yourself, sweetheart," the drunk sneered, raising his fist again, only to meet the business end of a spurred boot to the ribs. The crack of bone was downright musical. Before the fool could groan, a second blow shattered his nose like a rotten pumpkin. "She's under my protection now," drawled the stranger, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, but his eyes sharp as a bowie knife. Clara squinted up at him, her vision swimming. Help wasn't something she'd ever relied on, especially not from some wandering gunslinger with a Colt peacemaker slung low and a dust-caked duster that smelled of sagebrush and trouble. "Can you stand?" he asked, offering a calloused hand. Not pitying. Just there. Clara took it, her fingers trembling but her spine straight as a rifle barrel. "I've survived worse mornings after a bad poker hand." The corner of his mouth twitched. "Name's Elias Holt." "Clara Hayes." She spat blood into the dirt, "and that bastard's whiskey breath ain't half as foul as his manners." Elias glanced at the moaning heap in the street. "Friend of yours. Just another fool who thinks no means convince me." His grip tightened around hers just for a heartbeat before he let go. "You sure you're all right?" Her split lip throbbed, but she grinned. "Honey, I once shot a man for less than what he called my hat." The sheriff came huffing over like a winded bull, his suspenders dangling. "The hell's this?" Elias didn't blink. "Man hit a woman. I objected." The lawman eyed Elias's bloody knuckles, then the sobbing drunk. "You plant him in the dirt, too." "Would've," Elias said, "but figured you'd want the tax revenue from his bail money." The sheriff opened his mouth, then shut it when he caught sight of Clara's glare. "You pressing charges, Hayes?" "Nah," she said too sweetly. "But if I see him near my saloon again, I'll introduce him to my Derringer." As the sheriff dragged the man off, Clara turned toward the ramshackle boarding house at the end of the street, its porch sagging like a tired old mule. Elias fell into step beside her. "I don't need an escort," she muttered. "Didn't say you did," he replied, kicking a pebble. "But I've got a hunch that mouth of yours will land you in another scrap before sundown," she snorted. "You sticking around to find out?" He tipped his hat, the shadow hiding his smirk. "Might just buy a drink first. Heard the whiskey's cheap at Hayes' saloon." Clara stopped dead. "How'd you know Sign's hanging crooked, but it's there." He nodded at the faded placard above the door, the one that read Hayes and Sons, though the and Sons had been scratched out with what looked like a bullet hole. Elias's voice dropped, teasing. "Knew a fellow once who crossed Clara Hayes. They buried him with the poker chips still in his pocket." She arched a brow. "That a warning?" "No, ma'am," he said, stepping onto the creaky porch. "That's a compliment." Inside the saloon was cool and dim, smelling of tobacco and regret. A piano missing 3 keys plinked in the corner. Clara poured 2 fingers of bourbon, slid it across the bar, and leaned in. "All right, Holt, what's your real play here?" He knocked back the drink, wiped his mouth, and met her gaze. "Let's just say, I've got a feeling we're both hunting the same devil." Outside, a tumbleweed rolled by like the punchline to a joke nobody'd told yet. Clara smiled this time, no blood on her teeth. "Well then," she said, pouring herself a glass, "guess we'd better compare wanted posters." Clara exhaled through her nose, the ghost of a laugh in it. "You're either the dumbest outlaw I've ever met, or the only one with a shred of decency left." Elias leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking like a gallows rope. "Hell, I've been called worse before breakfast." Outside, the wind kicked up, rattling the saloon's shutters like a gambler shaking dice. She studied him over the rim of her glass, the way his fingers tapped absently on the bar, the faded scar cutting through his eyebrow like a misplaced comma in some tragic story. "You really ride into town just to play knight in dusty armor?" He grinned all teeth. "Nah, heard Deadwood's got the best damn peach cobbler west of the Mississippi. Rescuing stubborn women was just a happy accident." A sudden crash from the kitchen made them both reach for their guns. Clara was faster, her Derringer already leveled at the swinging door, but it was just old Tom, the one-eyed cook, stumbling out with a crate of shattered jars. "Damn raccoon got into the preserves again," he grumbled, kicking at the shards. Elias lowered his Colt slowly, but Clara didn't holster hers. "Tom," she said too sweet, "next time you scare me like that, I'm stuffing you in the jam cupboard." The old man paled and scurried off. Elias whistled low. "Remind me never to raid your pantry." Clara finally holstered the gun, but her smirk faded when she noticed the way Elias's gaze lingered on the staircase. "What?" He nodded at the tiny pair of boots tucked under the bottom step-patched leather scuffed at the toes. "Yours?" Her throat tightened. "My niece's, Lily." She didn't offer more, but the way her thumb rubbed over the wedding band she wore on a chain around her neck said enough. Elias didn't pry, just slid his hat back and said, "Kid like that deserves a world where men keep their fists to themselves." Clara's laugh was sharp as a blade. "And you're going to build it with what good intentions in a six-shooter?" "Nope," he said, standing suddenly. "With this?" He tossed a crumpled wanted poster onto the bar. The face staring back was familiar, the same drunk from earlier, but the name beneath it made Clara's blood run cold. Franklin Voss, wanted for the murder of Martha Hayes. The room tilted. Martha, her sister, Lily's mother. That bastard had been right there bleeding in her street, and she hadn't even... Elias's hand closed over hers, warm and rough. "Rode 3 states tracking him. Didn't know he'd wind up on your doorstep." Clara's voice was a whisper. "You let him live. Figured you'd want the pleasure." She yanked her hand away, knocking over her glass. Bourbon bled across the wood like old regrets. "You don't know what I want." "Cajate. Clara." He said her name like it was a prayer and a warning all at once. "That man's got a gang. They'll come for him. And when they do..." The piano in the corner wheezed as someone hit a sour note. Clara didn't turn around. "Then I guess you'd better stay for supper," she said, pulling a shotgun from beneath the bar. Lily liked stories about nights. Outside, thunder growled like a hungry beast. But inside Hayes' saloon, the air hummed with something far more dangerous than a storm. The sun dipped low over Deadwood, painting the prairie in shades of burnt amber as Clara balanced Lily on her hip, watching the girl try to count the new chickens in the coop. 1, 2, 5, Lily declared triumphantly, though there were clearly 7. Clara didn't correct her. Let the child have her victories. God knew there'd be enough disappointments later. A shadow fell across the dirt. "You teaching her math or creative accounting?" Elias leaned against the fence, his shirt damp with sweat and sleeves rolled past his forearms. A fresh cut ran along his knuckles, and Clara didn't ask. Some things didn't need explaining in a town like this. Lily gasped. "Mr. Knight." Elias choked on his own spit. "What?" "Now," Clara smirked. "She's decided you're one of those storybook types. Told her you rode in on a draft horse instead of that swayback nag you actually..." "Bessie's a fine steed," Elias protested, mock-offended. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a twisted stick of peppermint. "For the lady who appreciates chivalry." Lily squealed and snatched it before Clara could object. "You're spoiling her?" "Damn right." He crouched to Lily's level. "Next time I'll bring licorice, the black kind that stains your teeth like you've been chewing coal." Lily giggled, sticky fingers already in her hair. Clara sighed. She'll be up all night now. Elias stood, his grin fading as he nodded toward the saloon. "We need to talk, inside." The moment the door shut behind them, his posture changed. Shoulders tense, hand resting near his gun. "Voss's boys rolled into town an hour ago, asking about you." Clara's pulse spiked, but her voice stayed steady. "How many?" "4, plus the sheriff." That got her attention. "Hendricks. Seems our lawman's been taking bribes longer than he's been wearing that tin star." Elias tossed a crumpled telegram onto the bar. "Deliver Hayes alive. Bonus for the kid." The paper crinkled in Clara's fist. Outside, Lily's laughter floated through the window, oblivious. Elias watched her carefully. "You could run. I've got a horse." "Yar, and go where?" She laughed, sharp as a splinter. "This is my land. My sister's grave is out back. I'm done running." She reached under the counter and slid a second revolver toward him. "You still handy with one of these night..." Elias caught it midair, spinning the chamber with practiced ease. "Funny thing about fairy tales," he mused, checking the sights. "The dragons always lose." A sudden crash echoed from the street glass, shattering, then Hendricks's voice barking orders. Clara didn't flinch. She just lit the lantern, its glow catching the steel in her eyes. "Then let's give them one hell of a story." Somewhere upstairs, Lily hummed a lullaby. Outside, the wind carried the scent of coming rain and gun smoke. The candle guttered as midnight crept in, painting the walls with restless shadows. Clara wrung out another cloth, the vinegar biting at her cracked knuckles. Across the bed, Elias pressed a stethoscope stolen from Doc Henderson's saddlebag, no doubt to Lily's chest. His brow furrowed. "Lungs are clear," he muttered, "but her heart's racing like a spooked Mustang." Clara's fingers hovered over Lily's flushed cheeks. She's never been sick like this, not even when... The memory hit like a stray bullet, Martha sweating through her sheets, whispering, "Take care of my girl," with her last breath. Elias caught her wrist. "Hey, she's not her mama." His thumb brushed the inside of her pulse point, warm, calloused, alive. This is just a fever, not a death sentence. A sudden pounding at the door shattered the moment. Clara's Derringer was in hand before the second knock. Elias moved like shadow, flattening himself against the wall, expecting company. Only the kind that kicks doors down. The voice that slithered through the cracks turned her blood to ice. "Clara, darlin'," drawled Franklin Voss. "Heard your kid's poorly. Brought some medicine." Lily whimpered in her sleep. Clara's finger tightened on the trigger. Elias smirked, flipping the stethoscope like a gambler's coin. "Well now," he whispered, voice dripping with false cheer, "ain't that neighborly of him?" The Derringer trembled, not from fear, but the sheer audacity of the man who'd murdered her sister now offering help. Clara's laugh was razor wire wrapped in silk. "Why, Franklin," she called sweetly, "you always did have terrible timing. Outside, boots scuffed dirt. Now, Clara, we both know Hendricks ain't coming to save you this time." Elias plucked a glass bottle from the nightstand, Lily's cough syrup, and hurled it through the window. The explosion of shattering glass was followed by curses and a gunshot that took out the ceiling lamp. In the sudden darkness, Clara felt Elias's breath against her ear. Back door, now. But Lily chose that moment to sit bolt upright, eyes glassy with fever, and declare, "Uncle Frank's mean," before collapsing back into the pillows. A beat of stunned silence, then Elias snorted, "Well, can't argue with expert testimony." Clara didn't hesitate. She yanked the quilt off the bed, bundling Lily like a precious parcel, and tossed Elias the shotgun from behind the dresser. "You still good at making distractions?" His grin flashed white in the moonlight. "Honey, I was born tacky." Kicking open the back window, he fired both barrels into the air while bellowing, "The British are coming," like a drunk Paul Revere. As Voss's men scrambled in confusion, Clara leapt into the night with her daughter in her arms and realized two things. 1. Elias Holt was either a genius or insane. 2. She was out of bullets. The chicken coop would have to do. The first frost came early that year, nipping at the pumpkin vines in Clara's garden like a spiteful lover. She watched from the porch as Lily attempted to teach Elias's mangy dog, Samson, to dance by balancing a biscuit on his nose, a feat that ended predictably with the hound swallowing the treat hole and knocking the girl into a pile of leaves. 10 out of 10 for form," Elias called from the fence post he was repairing, hammer dangling between his knees. "But the landing needs work." Lily popped up, leaves stuck in her braids. "Uncle Boone tells Samson he's cheating." Clara nearly dropped her coffee. "Uncle Boone." Elias froze like a man who'd just realized he was standing on a rattlesnake. That's new." Lily shrugged, already chasing the dog again. "Mama says you're family now. Family gets titles." The hammer slipped from Elias's grip, nearly taking his toe off. Clara hid her smirk in her cup right up until the distant crack of a rifle split the morning air. Elias moved before the echo faded, yanking Lily behind him. Clara's Colt was in her hand before she registered reaching for it, but the road stayed empty, just a lone jackrabbit bolting across the scrub. "Hunter," Elias muttered, though his shoulders stayed tense. "Probably missed." Clara wasn't convinced. "We don't get hunters west of here. That's Voss land." A beat. Then Lily piped up from behind Elias's legs, "Is Bad Hat Frank coming back?" Elias's laugh was too sharp, too loud. "Nah, Sprout. Even idiots know better than to..." The second shot took out the porch lantern glass, raining down like jagged hail. Clara lunged, hauling Lily inside as Elias returned fire toward the ridge. The dog howled. The chickens erupted in squawking panic, and somewhere beyond the smoke, a horse galloped away. Clara barred the door, heart hammering. So much for him knowing better. Elias ejected spent shells, his grin all teeth. Guess we're giving Lily that lesson on battlefield surgery after all. Lily, meanwhile, crouched by the window with her toy spyglass. "I see him. He's got a stupid hat." Clara peered out. Sure enough, a lone rider vanished into the pines, but not before sunlight glinted off the sheriff's star pinned to his vest. Elias whistled. Hendricks, man must really hate paperwork. Clara's grip on the Colt tightened. This wasn't just a warning shot. This was a declaration. Outside, the dog started digging frantically by the fence post, right where Elias had been working. Dirt flew until Samson emerged triumphant, a rusted metal box clamped in his jaws. Elias paled. Oh, hell, that's... Clara pried it open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, lay a stack of deeds and a single bullet with Voss engraved on the casing. Lily gasped. Treasure, more like a death warrant, Clara muttered. The dates went back years. Every property Voss had seized, every family he'd run off, including Martha's. Elias met her eyes. You thinking what I'm thinking? Clara snapped the box shut. That we're burning down his empire? Nope. He scooped Lily onto his shoulders, nodding at the dog. That we're promoting Samson to detective. As the child's laughter filled the cabin, Clara allowed herself one terrifying thought. This was what fighting for a future felt like. The deed was signed in whiskey and axle grease, the ink smudged by Boone's work-rough fingers as he slapped it onto the mercantile counter. Clara didn't cry. She'd buried tears with Martha, but her hands shook as she traced the boundary lines. 23 acres. Theirs. Lily perched on Elias's shoulders, let out a war whoop that startled the shopkeep's parrot into squawking profanity. We're farmers now. Edie, ranchers, Sprout. Elias corrected, dodging the parrot's flung seed. Farmers grow turnips. We're raising hell and Herefords. Clara elbowed him. You're raising fences first. That creek's barely ankle deep. The shopkeep, a wizened man missing one eye and 3 teeth, leaned in. Ain't you heard that land's got a previous tenant? He dropped his voice to a whisper. Ghost of old man Voss's first wife. Hung herself in the barn after... Elias snatched the deed back. Perfect. Free scarecrow. The cabin they built leaned slightly north, as if tired before the roof was even on. Clara didn't mind. Crooked walls held memories better. She was hammering the porch rail when Elias rode up, a splintered wagon in tow and a grin brighter than their one good lantern. Merry Christmas, he declared, kicking loose a crate of glass jars that clinked like pirate treasure. Clara wiped sweat from her brow. It's July, and yet I've brought you the spoils of civilization. He pried open a jar with his teeth, revealing peaches swimming in amber syrup. Stole them from Henderson's cellar. You what? Liberated. He corrected, tossing one to Lily, who caught it with her apron. Turns out our dear doctor's been hoarding contraband preserves instead of paying his tab at the brothel. Clara should have been furious. Instead, she burst out laughing, a wild, unfettered sound that startled the chickadees from the birch tree. Elias watched her, his smile softening at the edges. Keep that up, he murmured, and I might just build you a 2-hole outhouse. Winter came early and hungry. The creek froze solid by November, and they burned through firewood faster than Lily could draw pictures in the frost on the windows. The night the blizzard hit, they huddled by the hearth, Elias telling embellished tales of his cattle-rustling days, which Clara knew for a fact consisted of 1 stolen goat when he was 12. Lily fell asleep mid-sentence, her head on Clara's lap syrup, still sticky on her chin. Elias reached over, brushing a strand of hair from the child's face. She's got your stubborn chin. And your terrible sense of humor. Clara hesitated. Elias, what if we're bad at this? He stoked the fire, sending sparks dancing. Sweetheart, we're already bad at it. The barn door fell off its hinges yesterday. But we're here. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her calloused palm. And I'll take crooked fences and haunted barns over any damn paradise without you two. Outside, the wind howled like a scorned lover. Inside, the fire burned steady. Somewhere between the laughter and the struggle, they'd built something rarer than gold, a home that leaned but never fell. The wedding was a quiet affair held under the crooked birch tree that marked the property line. The circuit rider smelled faintly of horse liniment and bad decisions, but he knew the words by heart. Clara wore Martha's old blue dress, the hem frayed but stubbornly holding together, much like the bride herself. Lily, now self-appointed flower girl and sheriff of the ceremony, scattered dandelion heads instead of petals and kept a stern eye on Elias's dog, who seemed determined to lift his leg on the preacher's saddlebags. Do you, Elias Holt, the preacher intoned, squinting at his notes, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded... Wait, he peered closer. Says here you're wanted for cattle rustling in 3 counties. Elias didn't miss a beat. Your point being, Clara snatched the paper, balled it up, and tossed it over her shoulder. Get on with it. The preacher sighed. Fine, do you? I do. And do you, Clara Hayes? Rowan, she corrected sharply. Elias grinned. Hayes Rowan. Sounds like a damn law firm. Lily tugged the preacher's sleeve. Can I say damn at my wedding? The celebration lasted until moonrise, fueled by Henderson's confiscated peach brandy and a haphazard cake Lily decorated with so many wildflowers it looked like a meadow had exploded. Clara was scraping icing off Elias's collar when he caught her wrist. Happy, she looked past him to Lily, teaching the dog to waltz to the chickens roosting contentedly in their fox-proof coop, to the cabin that still leaned but now boasted a proper porch swing. Not happy, she lied, pressing her forehead to his. Content is dangerous. Elias kissed her slow and sweet tasting of peaches and poor choices. Then let's be reckless. Winter came howling in that night, rattling the shutters like a drunk demanding entry. Clara woke to an empty bed and the sound of axe blows. She found Elias shirtless in the pre-dawn dark-splitting wood with single-minded fury, his breath clouding the air like gun smoke. Planning to heat the whole territory that she called over the wind. He drove the axe deep into the stump. Voss's men were at Henderson's last night, asking about our land. Clara's stomach iced over. They know about the deeds. Elias wiped sweat from his brow. Time to plant some unwelcome crops. He nodded toward the barn where his old Navy Colt hung beside her shotgun. Barbed wire and lead. She didn't flinch. We'll need to move Lily to... A small figure appeared in the doorway, clutching Mr. Henry the stuffed rabbit. I'm helping, Lily declared, her nightgown flapping in the wind. Elias scooped her up, tucking her into his coat. Damn right you are, partner. First lesson, always salt the earth of your enemies. Clara met his eyes over their daughter's head. No words needed. The storm could wait. They had a family to protect. The summer Veda turned 12, she shot her first buck, a scraggly 8-pointer more stubborn than fat, and dragged it home by the antlers with the pride of a conquering general. Clara nearly fainted at the blood on her daughter's pinafore. Elias just clapped her on the back and said, Next time, aim between the eyes, saves on butchering time. That night, as they salted venison in the root cellar, Clara caught Elias staring at the rifle above the hearth. You thinking what I'm thinking? That we've raised a pint-sized Annie Oakley. He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes, or that Voss's men won't stay gone forever. The lantern flickered as Clara dragged a finger through the salt pile. Let them come. We've got surprises planted. Elias arched a brow. You mean the dead boss? Cactus garden, she said sweetly, nodding toward the south pasture where 40 prickly pears now thrived. Turns out Henderson's medicinal tequila makes fine fertilizer. The years carved their stories into the land. The wheat fields doubled. The porch swing hosted generations of barn cats. And Lily, no one called her Veda anymore, outgrew ribbons but never her habit of naming livestock after historical figures. That pig's Cleopatra. She's eating her own offspring. Dramatic flair runs in the family, Clara muttered. Then came the autumn morning when a stranger rode up wearing a badge that hadn't tarnished yet. Name's Marshal Carter, he said, tipping his hat to Lily, now 17 and already sharper than most men in the territory. Looking for Elias Holt. Clara didn't reach for the shotgun, didn't need to. The cactus garden had grown thick as a fortress wall. He's busy. The marshal's gaze flicked to Elias, currently hip-deep in an irrigation ditch and cursing like a sailor. Ma'am, there's a pardon on offer, governor's seal and everything. Lily snatched the paper before Clara could stop her. For services rendered in the apprehension of Franklin Voss. Her head snapped up. You turned him in. Elias wiped mud on his trousers. Nah, just left some creative directions to his hideout where certain folks could find him. Clara's breath caught. All those years ago, the battlefield surgery lessons, the coded maps drawn in Lily's school books. The marshal tipped his hat again. Funny thing, Voss claims you framed him. Elias's laugh was dark as the coffee Clara loved. Funny thing, truth don't need framing. That winter, they framed the pardon next to Lily's wedding portrait, her in Martha's blue dress, her blacksmith husband grinning like he'd won the lottery. Clara traced the glass. Never pictured this. Elias wrapped his arms around her, his breath warm against her silver-streaked hair. What that we'd live to be old and cranky. Happy, and she corrected. Outside, the first snowflakes dusted the cactus spines like sugar. Inside, the fire burned steady. No outlaws came. No ghosts lingered. Just a family, a legacy, and land that remembered their names.